at all of the subscribing platforms. Great to be doing live radio again. It's kind of almost like the old days when I actually did the old-fashioned radio station, except now it's online, and I'm even able to take phone calls, and people can join in if they want to go to the link that I'm promoting on the blog site, and on Twitter you could see any promotion for the program. Links you right up to the show, so you're welcome to come on board. And my guest is none other than Hal Shurtleff from Camp Constitution. Hal, thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me on again, Chuck. It's always a pleasure. We go back a long ways. I think early 90s is when you had a show on Tufts University Station.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And when you invited me, we had a conversation. I said, this guy's pretty sharp. I don't know anybody knows much about what happened in China and what happened in World War I. I said, this guy, I get to know this guy.
Well, I've always been kind of an armchair historian. And you also introduced me to a lot of interesting people back then, including the late, great Dr. Samuel Blumenfeld, who became a good friend of mine, and who he and I did many, many hours of excellent radio. I just wish he could see what's going on today, but he passed away in 2015. And of course, Jack McManus, the director of the John Birch Society, and a bunch of other good people. So, it really introduced me to a lot of good thinkers, and broadened my thinking and my reach on so many issues. So I really appreciate that. And but Hal, here we are today, still with the remnants of the coronavirus. I'm not recommending that anybody go running around and expose themselves. It is a disease, and it's a very bad one. To put it in perspective, I think that it's becoming more and more obvious that really the people at risk are people over 80, and either that or people who have pre-existing health conditions such as heart disease or diabetes or cancer or something else that compromises their immune system. And I think that maybe with younger people, the reason they may be affected is they may have some of these conditions and not know it. They're not getting proper medical attention. But either way, the majority of people who do get this virus either are asymptomatic or they just, kind of tough it through like any other virus for about a couple of weeks and they get better. I think that what I find strange right now is that it's very difficult, at least in Massachusetts and probably in other states, to come across real statistics about, how many cases are happening, how many hospitalizations are occurring, how many deaths are occurring, what is actually going on in terms of the contagion, because my sense is that the contagion, the real hot contagious period was mid-April, and at this point it's pretty much over. Now that's not to say that it's not happening, but I want to see the data on that, and I'd like to be able to get access to that in a very simple way on a daily basis so we can really determine how much it's going on and how contagious it is. Now, Hal, do you know if there's any place where we can get that information?
Well, I know if you go to the Center for Disease Control, you're going to get a set of some information. I think if you live in Massachusetts, you go to mass.gov, they'll give you some statistics. But the old saying that statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics. For example, you'll hear every hour on the hour, there's now 100,000 or 110,000 cases. That gives you the appearance that there's 100,000 people that are in the hospital sick with, no, a lot of people have got it and have been cured or have healed from it, and they're going on their lives. We have deaths. The number of deaths in Massachusetts, I think it was 5,000, 6,000. I can't get that number, but 60 to 70% of these deaths have been happening in nursing homes, especially. Let me qualify that. Highly regulated highly state-regulated nursing homes, including state-run nursing homes, the old soldiers' homes in Chelsea and the one in Holyoke, Massachusetts, where they had heavy casualties. So, and I actually had a friend of mine who lives in Roxbury. His mom, who was a dear lady, she was in her 90s. She died in a nursing home. She got it, and she was dead in a day. So yeah, the most vulnerable people, older people, are susceptible. People with bad immune systems tend to have it. You have pre-existing conditions. So those are the people that should be safeguarded. Healthy people should not be quarantined. We didn't do that during the Spanish influenza. And I had an uncle who died of it. He was a young boy. He would have been a genius had he was a genius had he survived. Who knows what he would have accomplished? He died of the Spanish influenza. And you know what? He didn't. My grandparents didn't blame the president. Wilson at the time, as people are trying to blame Trump for everything. And under 30 in Massachusetts, no one has died under the age of 30. And you see, I live right here in Boston. I'm on my front porch, and I'll see people walk by scared to death with their masks on, their families with masks on, little children riding. In some cases, people walking by themselves. And this ridiculous unconstitutional decree said if you can't social distance 6 feet, wear a mask. So you got people who don't need to wear a mask when they're walking by themselves or walking their dog or when they're driving. They're wearing masks. They're just petrified. And it's like you step out in the street, they'll cross the street or you get away from you, which, hey, I don't care. If you're that worried about it, fine. So to me, it's overreach and it's destroyed the economy. It's going to be hard for this economy to recover. It was a thriving economy, and it's been destroyed because of an overreach. And I've been involved in a number of these Reopen Massachusetts rallies. We did it with Jeff Cooner, talk show host. A couple of thousand people showed up. It was some of us had masks, some didn't, and nobody got sick. People take precautions. We're supposed to be adults, and interesting too, if you look at people ailments. Now, there was a study, I think it came out of Johns Hopkins University a couple of years ago, saying that up to 250,000 people die a year because of misdiagnosis, doctors misdiagnosing. That sounds pretty high to me. But even if it was half that, well, do you shut the economy down because of that? Every time you meet heart disease, people die, people get sick, but and now it looks like it's going to be they say the new normal. There's Orwellian terms, a new normal. We won't shake hands anymore. We won't. We have to go in one-way aisles down supermarkets. It's just, to me, it's ludicrous. I've never seen anything like it. And you talk about the fear factor. They tried this back. You remember the swine flu epidemic or pandemic back in 2009 or 2008?
I do.
They tried to scare people, but it didn't seem to take for some reason. And here in West Roxbury, they were saying, we're going to have flu shots and at the school, and it's going to be a big mob, and it was going to go older people first and younger people. We're going to have police details. And only a handful of people showed up. They said, oh, good. It looks like people are catching on. They're not being panicked. This panic pornography that engaged in, and
massive panic propaganda.
The ship that had dispatched the Navy hospital ship to New York. I think another one in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I think they only had about 50 or 60 patients there. These field hospitals were basically overflowing, and it never came to it. Never happened.
It probably cost hundreds of billions of dollars. I know that here in Boston, they set up the Heinz Convention Center. There was only about 100 people that showed up there, and most of those people were just homeless, and they were being kept there. So. But I think one of the scandals that could come out of this, and I hope it does, is that it's kind of a moral obligation for society to protect the most vulnerable, and in this case, that would be people in nursing homes. And yet, Massachusetts is being a little skittish about releasing the number of people who died in nursing homes, especially, as you point out, the state-run ones. And you have states like New York with Andrew Cuomo, and Pennsylvania and Michigan and California. It seems all the left-wing blue state governors who passed this very strange law and signed this executive order early on in the pandemic, like in March, which basically required that hospitals turn COVID-19 active patients into nursing homes, and that it was illegal for nursing homes to deny them. It was mandated. I mean, to me, that's like sending, a crazed machine gunner into. It's like you're basically saying we're going to infect this entire population. I mean, you're sending people who are most vulnerable in a situation where they're exposed. Now, I'd like to see an explanation for that. It's not necessary. In Massachusetts, I think apparently they did not do this. We have in the state rents certain hotels, one in Revere, I believe, and one in Weymouth, where people who are in the hospital with an infectious disease who don't have a place to go are kept there, where they're cared for until they're better. So, here, at least in Massachusetts, we weren't that bad, but I think that these governors really should be held accountable, and we should not forget this. We should ask them why they did this, and that has a lot to do with the numbers of deaths in this virus.
Well, I think if you look at New York State, or if you just took the city itself and its greater metropolitan area, 30% of all of this happened there. New York, and then New Jersey was second or third. We were third or fourth, somewhere on the list. Of course, densely populated areas, you have to expect that. But if you took New York out of the factor, it would have been that, and many of the states, the Midwest had South Dakota never locked down. There were just a handful of fatalities, thankfully. And they actually gave a parade to the governor, I forget her name, but she was wise enough not to lock it down. Now, again, it's a big state. I've been there, sparsely populated, but they didn't panic. Maine is just the opposite. Maine didn't have that many cases outside of the greater Portland area and a few other spots. They locked it down. In fact, we were scheduled an event in late August. Late August, and they've canceled that. And it's going to destroy the industry. The tourist industry is being destroyed. Boy, I hate to own a hotel or a restaurant on the seacoast in Maine. It's
terrible. And Maine,
and then what's her name?
They've got a very left-wing governor now, and they had a really very suspect election where they had double voting, and as a result, they were able to take a Republican congressional victor and have him
lose first district, to
a liberal Democrat after he won, and then they did a revote, and then they got him out.
The ring choice.
Yeah, this is really, I hope that, as we move forward, and we could talk about the politics, but before we do, I want to address the other issue you brought up, which is so important. And that is the danger, the destructive aspect that this is having on the economy, especially small businesses, small mom and pop stores, restaurants, motels. People offering services and goods. It's really, really devastating to them. And of course, it's helped some of the really big people like Amazon and, some of them, but your average mom and pop Main Street business,
some of the large box stores,
they are really taking a hit. And in the meantime, the federal government has, signed into law a stimulus package worth $3 trillion, and they're paying people unemployed more money than they would earn, or at least as much as they would earn otherwise if they were working. And of course, now Congress is debating extending that till the end of the year. To my way of thinking, that's socialism. And it reminds me a little bit of the policies around the great crash of 1929, which economist Milton Friedman eventually pointed to as the culprit, the Federal Reserve System. And what happened was it crushed small businesses, small owners, and it allowed the big guys to come in and consolidate their power and pick up these companies. So, to my way of thinking,
right.
I don't want to, I generally think, yeah. Go ahead.
Let me give you a little microcosm. My wife has an in-house daycare business. I think she's licensed for 5 or 6 children. She's closed until the 29th of June. Now, she is getting unemployment. Not as much as if she was working, but when they allow, so-called, I hate the idea that the government is allowing us to reopen, as somehow the government, it tells you how much power they have. What will the protocol be? Well, maybe at only 50% or 20%. We can't operate that way. Yeah, if we had a big daycare business that holds 100 children or 50 children, you might be able to get by, but we can't get by with that. Well, it's no point. There's no incentive to reopen. So we'll be going out of business. Or my wife will be going out. My wife's this business, she took over from her mom. It's a 30-plus year business with a great reputation. Lots of young people have come through here over the years, and it's just going to probably come to an end. because of these ridiculous regulations that they will. And you own a restaurant, they'll say, "Oh, you can reopen, but you can only have outside seating." Well, what if you don't have outside seating?
Right.
Or how many? Like a day like today, not so bad. But what if it's raining out? What if it's windy? What if it's cold? What if it's really hot out and you want air conditioning? You don't want to go in outside the patio. Or takeout. Many restaurants aren't designed for takeout. It's only a small portion of their business.
That's
they
right.
can't survive. They have to shut down. And they're still going to have to pay taxes. They're going to have to pay rent. My daughter Christina, she started a job today, but she's back from college, Liberty University, and she's been unemployed because she works as a waitress. No restaurants are open. You can't wait on people who don't come into the store.
Right. Exactly.
So it's devastating. And then the barbershops. No, they've opened the barbershops up and the hair salons. And, you have to make an appointment. You have to wear a mask. You have to do this. I said, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not going. And they have to take your body, your temperature, and record who you are. I said, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing it. I have a friend who's a barber in New Hampshire, so I'm going to get my summer whiffle tomorrow. And he said to me, the state doesn't pay me to enforce their unconstitutional laws, so I'm not going to worry about it. I won't mention who it is. So
I understand. And to see, to have to wear the mask out in public, I think it's humiliating and it's unnecessary, it's subservient. It bothers me at so many levels.
That's again, if you think if you're worried about it, then wear a mask. That's fine.
Right.
But I haven't worn one. I tell you what I did. I went to the local post office, and I'm friendly with the clerks. I have an Amazon account, so they know my mom pretty well. And it was the first day of the mask mandate in Massachusetts. It wasn't until 7 weeks into the lockdown. And somebody said it's like trying to stop a pregnancy with a condom 2 months after the woman, your wife's pregnant. I said, well, you can't do that. So if the mask was important, why would you wait 7 weeks into the lockdown to say, oh, all the way, now you have to wear a mask?
Well,
and
look, there's all this irrational. We could go state to state and talk about some of these crazy irrational laws. In New York, you're allowed to go on the beach, but you can only walk on the dry sand, not the wet sand. You can't go in the water, or else de Blasio is going to send down troopers to pull you out. It's a lot of these liberal governors have become drunk with the authoritarian power that this thing has given them.
Oh, there's no question about that.
Now,
and
Al,
mayors like Marty Walsh.
Yeah, exactly. Walsh is one of the big ones. Look, as I said, we started out talking about my suspicion, which is that the contagion level has dropped considerably, that every day there are less and less cases, and that at this point, I would think, and I'm not a doctor, but I would think that it can be dealt with very locally. Like if there's an outbreak in a certain community, then that particular community can do the distancing, but they don't have to lock down the entire economy. And they should be reopening pretty quickly at this point and building confidence for people rather than doing the scare tactic every day. And, I wonder, if Eric Trump was right when he sent out that tweet that he was criticized for, but I think it was quite prescient in that he said that he thinks that the pandemic is going to go on and the lockdown until the day after the election. Right. And then it'll suddenly go away.
Well, I guess it depends on who, right. Yeah, if the Democrats win the election, then it's a non-issue. Everything's back open, and yeah.
And then if Trump wins re-election, it's going to be more talk about impeachment. So, I guess that brings up the broader question, which is, are they keeping this thing going as long as they can? Are they trying to drag it out till the election so that they can damage the economy as much as possible to hurt Donald Trump?
Well, I'm of that opinion. They tried first off. They tried to invoke the 25th Amendment before he even took his oath, right?
Sure.
Trying to say that he was insane and he had to be removed from office. And then they had to see the Russian collusion, and that wasn't true. Then it was the Ukrainian problem. And here's Russia and Ukraine fighting each other. See, and you've got guys that go bomb that we have him on video saying to the president, the premier, he said, when I'm reelected, we'd be able to get away with more. It was something to that effect. And Biden going to Ukraine and basically, twisting there, you don't get the money unless you fire this prosecutor. It's all on video. I mean, it's not like people don't know about this. Yeah. And yet they go after Trump because he had a phone call. And by the way, we shouldn't be giving foreign aid to anybody. And that issue didn't come up. But if we do give foreign aid, by all means, there should be a tit for tat. Chuck, if I was to hire you for services, yes, I'm going to hire you, but I expect you to do this. I'll give you this money, but I expect you to do that. So it makes sense. Here's foreign aid. There should be strings. I don't just give here's a big bucket of money. Here's $100 bills.
This might be what's really pissing them off more than anything, the sort of the deep state about Trump, and that is that he is cutting back on giving foreign aid to our enemies. He is forcing NATO to pay for their own defense, and they are doing it. Apparently Germany has really stepped up, even though they yell and scream. They are paying now for their own defense, and we've cut way back, and it's worked very well. He is, signing trade deals that are benefiting to American industry and labor, getting out of these internationalist, globalist deals, which hurt American business and hurt our sovereignty. This is what it's all about. This is why they're trying to take Trump out. And now the pandemic, whether or not it was cooked up in a lab or whether it was natural, I have no idea. But what I do know is that they are using this. They are exploiting it. It's like what Rahm Emanuel said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And now we're at the point where that's starting to wind down. It's becoming more obvious that people are, and I think the American people, when they see the falseness of this and they realize that this disease was not as contagious as we thought, they're going to turn on the Democrats. So what happens? This poor man is brutally killed by a bad cop in Minneapolis. By the way, this same cop who apparently had killed someone previously and who had a very bad record, he was not prosecuted by the district attorney of Hennepin County at the time, who then ran for president, that being Amy Klobuchar. And, so they let him off the hook. And, he then went ahead and he killed this man. I mean, look, putting aside who that man was, that's another story. That doesn't matter. The point is, it was. Look,
can I bring something? Let me bring this up here. I've been to Minneapolis a number of times. It's a left-wing city, like most big cities in the United States. Yeah. It would be next to impossible to have some flaming Klansman as a policeman he's been there, 15 years? Right. So I believe that he was a cop, no question about it. But I'm not convinced that this is racially motivated. It would be a death sentence to actually a cop to do something like this. So they're trying to make it a racial issue. It was a bad cop and his victim happened to be black. Lots of white people are killed by cops as well. And I imagine, and I haven't checked the record, but if you look at all the complaints against him, I would imagine that there's a lot of white people that have complained against him as well. So, and nothing was done about it. And then we have this incident. But they would have found something else, I'm sure. They want to have a riot. They want to.
It's very predictable. The one in Atlanta didn't work out too well because the guy apparently was robbing houses. So they were. It's almost like they were waiting for something like this to happen. And it kind of reminds me of 2012 when Mitt Romney was running against Obama, and then you had Trayvon Martin, which turned out to not exactly be as they portrayed it. The guy who killed Trayvon Martin was not white. So. And yet and they doctored the tape, and we could go over that. I don't want to go back there. But the point I'm making is that this strikes a raw nerve in American culture, and they knew it did, and they knew that it would galvanize their vote and get the black people in particular back on the liberal reservation. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't police brutality against black men. However, statistically, it has lessened greatly, especially since the early 70s. And it has become much less frequent. So now I was watching one of these liberal news shows the other night. Oh, how horrible it is to be a black man in the United States. You think that this was like being a Jew in Nazi Germany in 1935. It's like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely, yes, these things happen. But, and they shouldn't happen. And by the way, I think that the police one of the criticisms I would put forth there, and this is just speculation on my part, is that I don't know if you remember the movie Serpico with Al Pacino.
Oh yes, I do. Yes.
Right.
Oh,
I
yes,
mean,
yeah.
he was an honest cop who went into New York City and he found corruption in that department, and it showed that it went up to the very highest levels, right up to the mayor, and he ended up being shot, and then of course he left the country. But the point is that I think that there are big city police departments and patrolmen's associations which have a certain level of almost Masonic like secrecy, where they take an oath of omerta to not, expose each other to things. Maybe I'm, I wonder, I would distrust anyways of secret societies and, and that sort of thing. But I think that there might be a problem with that, especially in these big liberal Democrat cities with these police associations.
Let me mention, it's interesting you bring that up. I met a policeman many years ago. He was from Somerville, Massachusetts, just on the outskirts of Boston.
Yeah.
And he said, in order to get any promotion, you had to be a Yankee Mason. That was probably going back in 100 years ago or more. And in Boston, it was more of an Irish good old boys club for many, many years.
Sure.
One of my late friends was one of the founders of the Patrolmen's Association, because we had a riot. We had the 1919 Boston policemen's, not riot, but strike. And Calvin Coolidge called in the National Guard. And they started a union, and the union was done away with. And of course, he said you should never, if you're defending the public, you don't have a right to strike. That's not the exact quote. And that put Calvin Coolidge on the national stage and got him to the White House. But the Patrolmen's Association, and they're a very conservative group of people, by the way. They just sent a scathing letter to Rachel Rollins, who's the Suffolk County Attorney General, an elected official. She happens to be a woman of color, black. And she actually said yesterday that the police are murdering people. And she didn't say some or one, but all. And to make matters worse, our Attorney General, Maura Healey, who is a left-wing activist, she spoke at a gathering yesterday. And she said something to the fact that things are where cities burning, but that's how forests grow. Well, I guess she knows a little about how forests do grow. And yes, you burn down a forest, but that's how you get new growth. So she's defending it. These are the radicals, and then you have Ayanna Pressley, former city councilor, screaming and ranting and raving about racism. You got elected in a district. Yeah, they were mostly whites elected you, but it's still racism. The Boston police chief is black.
Yeah, not to mention that I think something like 40% of the police are black, and that. And by the way, Maura Healey, just to update people, right after the election, she set up a hotline to report a Trump. Right, snitch on a Trump supporter. Remember that?
Oh yes, I'm telling you, she's just and the sad thing is that people vote for these folks, and then when you need when there's a crisis, they're not going to be there when you need them. They're going to be on the other side. So it's definitely look at Senator Warren. She's marching with the people in D.C. And a lot of these people are just, hey, it's something exciting. I've been locked up in the house for 3 months. I'm out in the street doing things. And when you have lots of people on the street, it doesn't take much to get a riot going. You don't need all you need is a handful of people coming in there causing a violence, and this thing's escalate. And then of course, then you see the policemen will have to react. And it was interesting too, because being involved in the John Birch Society for many, many years, we learn a lot about how this stuff happens, and from the 60s. And it's always about getting people out in the street, and then having their agent provocateurs do things, firebomb, kill, or shoot someone, and then act. And then they'll say, well, they overreact. And then what's the next step? More government, more laws. So what they're doing is they're actually making an excuse for martial law or for some dramatic changes in history. I had to dig this out. This is a communist plot against the free world press. This was a congressional record hearing at the Senate subcommittee hearing back in 1961, how a communist will go after, and this is mostly in Europe, and how the communists use their tactics. And we put this back in print, and it's on our Amazon account. And if anyone's interested, just get a hold of me through our website, and I'll be happy to make a small donation, get this off to you. But it shows you how the streets, how the communists use the pincer movement. It's really fascinating. So sometimes these dusty old pamphlets come back into vogue because of what's happening. The playbook hasn't changed a lot.
Right.
Exactly. It's still out there. They used to say playbook. And let's make no mistake about it. These aren't free-thinking progressives that are doing this violence. These are the Antifa. They're a terrorist organization, indeed. In fact, they don't hide it. They're happy about it.
No, look, the even the state of Minnesota, which is as liberal as you can get, I think the last Republican they voted for was Eisenhower, and Minneapolis run by these left-wing governments. They have said that the 65 people that were arrested after looting the city and burning the downtown, all of them were from either out of state or out of the country. This is not local people. Who were they? I mean, are we going to ever find out specifically who these people were? What were their associations? You notice that they're burning black neighborhoods and destroying black businesses and killing black
businesses.
People.
Yes.
There's been 5 deaths already due to these riots, all of whom are black. You have this woman lawyer, apparently, in New York. She's a lawyer. She's an officer of the court. She threw a Molotov cocktail into a cop car with 4 police officers. It didn't go off. She's now being charged with 4 counts of attempted murder and should be. And, you have these, elite, predominantly white, left-wing, communist agitators coming in from the outside, probably on the payroll of George Soros. I mean, I think if they arrested George Soros, they could end this whole thing. Talk about subversion and sedition and the fomenting of criminality and violent communist revolution. That's what this is. This is a communist revolution. You can now see manifestations of it all over the world. It's like 1848.
That's right. The European. There was a great meme. It showed Soros watching the news, eating popcorn. I'm getting my money's worth. One.
Yeah.
But here in Boston, I don't think we had a racist incident with the police. I can't remember the last time there was, some kind of unjustified shooting. Yet they went after the cop. They had a riot Sunday. And there were 54 people arrested. Now there's an online thing, Turtle Boy Sports, and they did a detailed. It's a little vulgar. The reporter uses, or the writer uses a lot of F-bombs, so it's just as a little caveat. But if you go to turtleboysports.org or .com, you'll find it. Most of the people, half of them were from the Boston area, Boston itself. Most of them were young. Almost all of them were young. 20s and 30s, and there were whites, blacks, and Hispanics. So it was a mix. It wasn't all blacks or all whites. And they were part of they met in what used to be called Dudley Square, but they call it now Nubia Square. I don't know. They think that Governor Dudley was a racist from this. So they name it after a place in Africa that had slaves. So I don't know. It's just crazy. This cultural Marxism that's taking over.
So
they marched from there to the State House. But by the time they got to the State House, he said, let's go to downtown Boston. Let's loot some businesses and destroy some businesses. And 7 cops are hurt. Now, Monday, I live in the West Roxbury section, and they decided to have a vigil just about maybe a fourth of a mile from me, not even, maybe less than that, where the police station is. There's a rotary, a traffic circle, as other people call it.
Right.
And there was intel that Antifa was going to have a riot. They said, we're going to go out in the neighborhoods now, in the predominantly white neighborhoods, and take what's ours. So I've never seen this in my life, Chuck, but the CVS drugstore, which is a stone's throw from the house, was boarded up. And that was very troubling because they're saying that we can't be safe. We can't control what's happening. We're boarding up and we're bugging out, you see. In a way, I can't blame them. But on the other hand, the Hyde Park, the Boston I grew up in, they would have been sitting there with their rifles or shotguns saying, we're not going to let the looters prevail. But they decided, and boarding up a window with this plywood doesn't guarantee that they could easily rip that plywood off and take care of business. It's just, it's like wearing a face mask. It really doesn't work that much,
No,
but there were businesses, the hardware store was boarded up, and I thought, guys, don't let these people control the streets. Yeah, we don't have to, but we did. I sent my wife and my daughters to an in-law's house about 10 miles south here. My son and I said, this is our house. This is our property. And we did take the Camp Constitution van. I figured they see that, they might try to destroy it. But we weren't looking for trouble, but we were lock and loaded. My son he's got a martial arts dummy. He put a face mask. We put the BB gun in the backyard.
I could just see you and your son sitting on the porch with your rifles, waiting for them to come. Oh man,
we were lock and loaded, and thankfully nothing happened. But it's just, we shouldn't live in an area. This is, you pay your property tax. And this is a nice, quiet community. That we like it that way. We don't want. We got a couple of restaurants here, and it's just street. This is what people want. That's why you pay a little bit more, because you want that kind of thing.
No, I mean, I live.
I think a lot of people. I think the property value is going
to be affected.
Well, you're a lot closer to downtown Boston.
I live in Austin, Brighton part of Boston, and we haven't had anything other than some graffiti saying BLM and stuff like that. But and again, I would point out that the majority of people who are going out and protesting are, as President Trump described with Charlottesville, good people. They just want to express themselves because they're seeing this video of this man being killed, and it does look like a racist incident. It very well may be. It probably, there are more instances like this, against black people, and we should talk about that. But the problem is that, like so much else, it's exploited by and undermined by left-wing organizations like Antifa and Black Lives Matter and anti-Jewish organizations that are spraying synagogues with Palestinian graffiti, and a motley collection of other people, the same people who came out, the Ruckus Club came out during the Iraq War. It's the same people, coordinated in the same way, the same types. You see them out with their little, gray ponytails and knitted caps, and angry faces, and their alliance, right, with all of these. They're shaking their fists at everyone. Then they go back to their gated community after they talk about disbanding police departments. It's the same group. And
Chuck, I want to mention. I like to contrast. I was involved in 4 reopened Massachusetts events. The first one was a convoy where we met at the waterfront in the New England Aquarium. There were 40 vehicles, and we had flags, and there were some people with Trump flags, and we convoyed throughout the South End, Fenway, downtown Boston, the financial district, which is in Chinatown. It was kind of interesting. We go through Chinatown, and it was really shuttered. I mean, you didn't see anyone. And back in February and early March, but back in February and early March, the liberal politicians come to Chinatown. Don't be racist. Come to the restaurants. And this was back in, I guess it was the third week in March. I didn't see Marty Walsh and the Chinese restaurants. Not only were they locked, but they were padlocked. They were chained. I said, this is really something. And even our local Chinese restaurant they reopened. I said, hey, where are you? We go there about once a week or once every 2 weeks. And by the way, being precautious doesn't make you a racist. Then all of a sudden we have a lockdown, shut down, and they forgot about what they said about Chinatown. De Blasio, didn't they have a New Year's? He said, enjoy, don't worry about it, nothing to worry about. And then he turned around saying it's Trump's fault. He didn't act fat. He should have known in 2017 that this was going to happen. I guess he should have locked us down in 2017. They would have been happy.
Well, anyway, these communist agitators, we're not going to hear the end of this. And again, I mean, last night I watched one of these liberal, mainstream, I think it was CBS. Every night, all they do is run the worst possible stories about Trump, and it's always something very trivial. You know,
Mhm,
he
that's
didn't,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
ordered an extra scoop of ice cream at a state dinner. We have to hear a whole segment about this, right? Instead of, you know, never mind the fact that, you know, 50 people were killed in Afghanistan. Never mind, you know, that China is
Right.
cracking down on Hong Kong. Oh, no, no, no. They have to run, you know, really negative and usually concocted story. Well, now the narrative from now till election day is going to be how racist we all are, that black people are oppressed. As I said, it's like the way Jews were treated in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. It's insane, you know. And we're going to hear
Well, you know
this.
something.
We're never going to hear the end of it. We're not going to hear the end of it right up till election day, with the implication, of course, that anybody who supports Trump is to blame, and that somehow we're, you know, the ones. Meanwhile, there are all these left wingers are in the lily white, rich suburbs of Boston, where you don't find a black person.
That's right.
People like Lawrence Tribe.
That's
I don't
right.
mean to single him out, but let me just get this off my chest. Lawrence Tribe, I don't know if you get his tweet on Twitter. I get his tweet every day. He makes Alex Jones look like, you know, like Walter Cronkite. I mean, with his maybe conspiracy theories about Trump.
Yeah.
And this is a Harvard professor who was considered by Obama for the Supreme Court. It's embarrassing. And he went out with a tweet.
Lawrence Lost Tribe.
Oh, my God. And I always respond to him. And he went out with a tweet the other day. He's criticizing Trump for going to St. John's Church, which is a church on Lafayette Circle that every American president since James Madison has prayed at. And that was burned and looted by these communists. Trump goes out there to put a spotlight on it. And Tribe is complaining, oh, you know, making this whole thing. So I sent him back a tweet saying, I'm sure you'd rather see that these people burn down the White House or anything to make Trump look bad. You know, it's like, what the hell? You know, what does he expect? I mean, it's like these people are demented, or either that, or in the case of Tribe, because he's someone who should know better. He's not stupid. He is a witting and conscious participant in. He is out there putting out this crap every single day, and people are, you know, he probably has a million followers reading this stuff and goose-stepping around. And it is complete garbage. It is utterly inflammatory, conspiracy, you know, the worst. I mean, you know, I believe in conspiracies. I mean, I think that a lot of things are planned. But his stuff is trivia. You know, it's like, you know, it doesn't even add up. And between him and Rob Reiner, that fat Hollywood slob, and his obnoxious, you know, profanity-laced tweets, you know, fuck
right?
Trump and all this, he goes on and on. I mean, this guy is probably part of the pedophile rings in Hollywood, and he's there, you know, wagging his fat finger at Trump. I mean, these people are crazy. Anyway, thanks.
Well, what's interesting too is the filthy language that's become mainstream now. The mayor of Chicago saying, you know, she didn't say the words, but you obviously you know what. Yeah. Now, could you imagine a conservative mayor in a big city, if there's such thing, saying that about Obama? Could you imagine what would happen? Instead of being nominated for the Profiles in Courage Award that she'll probably get. And by the way, she also, there was a church, almost a black church in south side of Chicago that kept open. She sent her police out to basically shut them down. And I forget the legal term, but they issued something which actually gives them the right, I think it's illegal, but allegedly gives them the power to actually confiscate the church and potentially bulldoze it down. I forget what the term was. Can you imagine if that was a white conservative mayor of shutting down a black church? It would have been national news. People would be all, but not even a yawn. It's just like this poor black retired policeman, 77 years of age in St. Louis. He was going into a pawn shop. He was just probably acting instinctively after being a policeman for I don't know how many years, and he was gut shot. And is this what it's all about? This man lost his life trying to preserve peace. by people who are allegedly all upset about what happened. And I want to mention, Chuck, that again, I mentioned earlier that I was involved in some various rallies. One of them was almost up to 3,000 people, conservative people, and the narrative was white supremacists. Now, there weren't any Antifa because we had a good contingent of Bikers for Trump. Somehow when the Bikers for Trump show up, the Antifa stay home. Now, I know that since it's getting warmer out, and the basements now are humid, so a lot of the Antifa people are coming out of them on these basements and causing mischief. Well, there was another rally this past Saturday at the State House, not as well attended, and there were about 50 counter-protesters. They were members of the Revolutionary Communist Party. I mean, they didn't hide their colors. Again, there was no violence, although they tried to provoke us by coming over on our side, and we were able to surround them. I have my son who's martial arts trained. He was there to keep the peace. And all of them were white. There was one black person, and he wasn't part of their group. He was there, he was on our end, and he come over there. But they were screaming white supremacy, and we had more blacks on our side of the 8 or 9 speakers. There were 4 black speakers. There were 2 Asian speakers. There was the Vietnamese for Trump. There was the Falun Gong people, the Chinese, who are wonderful people I know very well. There were Hispanics there and others. Yet all of these communists, all of them were white. And they were, there's one girl, she was actually attractive, of course, with the mask, you could see. She looked like, man, someone you see down my daughter, a cute young girl, just uttering obscenities. I said, so our Reverend Stevie Kraft, who who happens to be black, he opened in prayer. He said, right, this is a spiritual issue here. That when you see the depravity and the hatred, we want to open up. That's okay. They'll say opening up is you're a white supremacist if you want to open up. I mean, they make this. I said, people actually believe this now.
And they're in a war against black people and black neighborhoods. They're burning and looting black businesses all over the United States. People who have invested their life work and life savings into businesses that are now being burned to the ground. Same thing happened in the 60s with the big summer riots.
Well, the narrative is, Chuck, that there aren't any black-owned businesses because of racism. That blacks could not have any business as well.
By the time they're done, black
they're doing
people,
pretty well. I haven't seen.
By the time they're done burning, there won't be any black businesses thanks to them.
That's right.
They're going to burn. I mean, we should remember, in 1967, these communist agitators destroyed whole cities that never recovered, like Detroit and Newark, New Jersey. I mean, these were predominantly African American and minority cities. They destroyed the lives of people for a generation. These cities never recovered. I don't think that's going to happen again because I understand
Newark, New Jersey was another one.
Yeah, you have now black people going out and defending their property and defending their businesses and moving people out. So I think it's going to stop because of that. That's going to be the deciding factor. But nevertheless, I mean, they probably don't want it to go along too long because it is going to become more and more obvious. But as I say, Helen, we're going to kind of reach toward the end here. We're never going to hear the end of it. Every day, like a drumbeat between now and election, that we're all racist and that black men in particular are being treated like Jews in Nazi Germany. And this country is evil, and that it's, how we're going to hear these highfalutin intellectuals with their bugwumps come out. Oh, according to the milieu, and they're going to write papers about how the American brain has been, the cerebellum is out of balance because the cerebrum was affected after so many years in the milieu. And the milieu, we're never going to hear the end of it. It's going to go on and on and on. I don't know if it's going to work for them. They certainly have tried everything. I don't know, and Matt Drudge, by the way, is completely in the
This might be their last grasp. Yeah, this is their last grasp, I think, and they know they're desperate. They have a terrible candidate. He's not doing so well intellectually, and he's hard. And he actually said such a race.
I mean, talk about corruption. Oh, I know exactly. What an arrogant
and of course.
You're not black if you don't vote for him. To a black radio host,
you got to vote.
You're not really black if you vote for Trump. That's right. That's so condescending, and that shows the real. I mean, that really is racist
in the real sense. It's not just some past part.
Well, let me quote Malcolm X. I'm not a fan of the late Malcolm X, but I read his autobiography, and he said that a white liberal spells Negro. And of course, the word Negro was accepted back in the 60s. It was a generic term. Right. He said a white liberal spells Negro K-N-E-E-G-R-O-W, meaning the white liberal is condescending. You know, like, hey, you need me, black man. You can't get anything done without my leadership and that's what Biden just demonstrated.
Of course. And meanwhile, they're pushing programs that have destroyed the black family, destroyed the black church, destroyed black education, and destroyed black entrepreneurialism. You know, talk about racist.
In spite of that,
you know, let's go back and talk about who's really racist in the real sense. Who has supported policies that have hurt the black community? You know, illegal immigration has hurt black employment. You know, let's talk about that. Yeah. You know, the Clinton era, you know, anti-drug laws have put black men in prison for having a nickel bag of marijuana. You know,
and it was the evil orange man, the evil orange man that got those laws repealed too.
Exactly.
And a lot of people were,
thanks to Trump's.
A lot of people were doing serious hard time.
Yeah, I mean,
that's right.
You know, there's been over 10,000 prisoners released, and 90% of whom are black, and should not have been in prison. Mm-hmm. You know, for misdemeanors. I mean, talk about, you know.
Well, in prison, you know, for a short amount of time, right. or not, no prison.
Exactly. I mean, this was talk about criminalizing behavior. I mean, these hypocrites are sitting on top of that. You know, we could take a look at some of the, you know, like Kamala Harris and some of these liberal Democrats who presided over, you know, privatizing prisons and using prisoners as forced labor. But that's another subject for another day. Anyway, Hal, but since we're toward the end, I want you to once again let people know how they can find out about Camp Constitution and about any of your websites and your show and what you're up to.
Okay, well, we are holding our annual family camp. I'll have the little promotional pamphlet here, July 19th to the 24th at the Singing Hills Christian Camp in northern New Hampshire, about an hour north of Concord. Beautiful location, and we have enrollment is now open, and we have some great instructors. We have Alex Newman, whom you know, will be there with his family. Alex is one of the top experts on Common Core, and also the Deep State. He'll be there for Lord Christopher Monkton, whom you become friendly with. Will be there, and if you can't come out, we'll bring the Lord to you. How's that? We get a chance to meet him in person.
In my case, that might be a little tricky right now. But...
And we have, okay, well, but we have some great fun. We campfire every night. We have swimming and hiking and basketball tournaments and even some martial arts demonstrations too. So it's a great time. It starts on Sunday afternoon, July 19th, and ends on Friday morning, July 24th. So visit our website for more information, campconstitution.net. Visit us on YouTube, our Facebook page. Help us on Amazon. We got the great Amazon account, and we have our own bookstore too. And I'm all out of these T-shirts, so I got 2 left in small, I should say.
Right on.
Joe McCarthy, miss me. I told you so.
So as well, you did. He's like a prophet. All right, Hal Shurtleff, and I shall return, God willing, tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Charles Moscowitz, thanks for joining me, everyone. Have a great afternoon.